Welcome everyone. If this is your first time watching or you're just getting into Jiu Jitsu or Sambo and you want to know more about each sport, welcome. I'm glad to have you. Why not stick around for a while and smash that subscribe button while you're at it? If you are already subscribed, then you probably know that I will be firmly on team Jiu Jitsu crushes Sambo, but please don't click off if you're a Sambo fan. I'll try to be impartial. All of this Jiu Jitsu vs Sambo talk popped up again recently after some comments from Mikey Musumeci, where he basically issued an open challenge to Sambo guys to come see what's better, Sambo or Jiu Jitsu. If you're a Jiu Jitsu fan, you might be thinking, what exactly is Sambo? Why are we better than Sambo? Why can't Sambo beat us? I'm going to get into all of that for you, see how I'm being impartial already. But before we get into all of that, I just want to remind you that whether you're doing Jiu Jitsu or Sambo, EpicRollBJJ.com is still your one-stop shop for all things grappling apparel. Fight shorts, rash guards, gis, t-shirts, hats, hoodies, joggers, anything you need to look your best on or off the mat, Epic Roll has you covered. Plus, with the code podcast15 at EpicRollBJJ.com, you can take 15% off your order. That's 15% off already affordable apparel, and affordable doesn't mean cheaply made. Epic Roll is gear made by grapplers for grapplers, and it's designed to hold up during your most intense training sessions. Give Epic Roll a follow on the gram at EpicRollBJJ, and don't forget to take 15% off your order with the code podcast15. EpicRollBJJ.com, coupon code podcast15. Now, I'm probably going to make some Sambo guys mad. That's why we have the comment section, so fire away in either defense of Sambo or defense of Jiu Jitsu. The word Sambo itself is an acronym for some Russian words that I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but I'll put them on screen for you to have a crack at it. The acronym translates to self-defense without weapons, and it started as the Red Army's hand-to-hand combat training and was designed to be a merger of different martial arts. There are actually a few different types of Sambo. You have self-defense Sambo, which is pretty self-explanatory, special Sambo, which is mainly aimed at the military for their use, combat Sambo, which resembles MMA with striking and grappling mixed together. There's sport Sambo that doesn't have strikes or chokes and could in broad strokes be considered judo with leg locks. Then you have freestyle Sambo, which was introduced in 2004 to try to get judo and jiu-jitsu athletes into Sambo, and that doesn't allow strikes, but it does allow a wider variety of submissions than some of the other forms. You've probably noticed from what I've put on screen for you, but the Sambo uniform is very different than a jiu-jitsu uniform. It consists of a gi top called a kurtka, and that differs from a jiu-jitsu gi in that it has shoulder straps you can grab and loops for your belt. You also wear wrestling pants and shoes, and in combat Sambo, you wear headgear and gloves. In sports Sambo, there are 4 ways to win a match. Number 1, you can win by points. Number 2, you can have an 8-point lead at any point in the match. Number 3, you perform a perfect throw, similar to how an ippon in judo immediately wins the match. Number 4, you submit your opponent. There's a fellow you may have heard of named Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is probably the most well-known Sambo athlete. He also happens to be considered by some to be the best UFC lightweight champion of all time. You'll notice I said some and not me, but that's a conversation for a different video. Khabib's base is in Sambo, and much of his success in the UFC was due in no small part to his Sambo experience. He also wrestled that bear that time, so I'm sure that helped. In addition to Khabib, Zabit Magomedsharipov, who I'm going to assume that was a perfect pronunciation of his name, he recently retired from the UFC, but he also competed in Sambo, and he even competed in Sambo against Islam Makhachev, the man who will face Charles Oliveira in a few weeks for the UFC lightweight title. You can see in this video of Islam versus Zabit how combat Sambo looks an awful lot like MMA. Because of its history and creation as a Russian martial art, many fighters from that area of the world have Sambo experience, and you are seeing more and more Sambo fighters make their way into the UFC and do very well there. Just in case anyone is watching this who is just getting into grappling, I'll give you a quick jiu-jitsu rundown before we do a comparison. Jiu-jitsu is a grappling sport that does not involve striking of any kind and instead focuses on fighting on the ground. The goal is to force your opponent to submit either by attacking their limbs and joints or by choking them. You win matches either by scoring more points than your opponent or forcing them to submit. A big difference between BJJ and Sambo is that Sambo does not allow chokes unless it's combat Sambo, while obviously chokes are a main component of Jiu Jitsu. Jiu Jitsu doesn't allow strikes of any kind, but combat Sambo does. Also, Sambo tends to have a wrestling heavy approach, whereas in Jiu Jitsu, wrestling isn't as commonly practiced, although I think that trend is changing. Sambo also does not allow guard pulling like Jiu Jitsu does. With the ability to win a Sambo match by hitting a perfect throw a la Judo, there's again more of a stand-up approach to Sambo than there is to Jiu Jitsu, although some handsome Jiu Jitsu brown belts do like to pretend they are good at Judo. Jiu Jitsu also allows the closed guard position where Sambo does not. So, which is better? Again, I'm a Jiu Jitsu guy. That's literally the name of this channel. Going back to what Mikey Musumeci said, I think a hypothetical Jiu Jitsu versus Sambo matchup would be a lot of fun, and the outcome would wholly depend on what kind of Sambo we're talking about here. And before we get into that, I think Khabib beats Mikey in any style of Sambo versus Jiu Jitsu. You can let me know in the comments why you think I'm wrong. If you put a Jiu Jitsu athlete into a combat Sambo match, I think the striking aspect alone is enough to say right out of the gate that the Sambo fighter has the advantage and would probably win the match. Striking is completely foreign to most Jiu Jitsu practitioners, and if you're inexperienced in anything and you go up against someone who is experienced in that thing, you're not going to have a lot of success. But Mikey is talking about the submission grappling aspect of Sambo, so I'm pretty sure Mikey in a combat Sambo match is off the table, which is probably for the best. Even still, I think it's down to the rule set. If Mikey is allowed to pull guard and not be penalized for it, like in a Jiu Jitsu match where he can do that, I think him versus the highest ranked Sambo athlete in his weight would be a win for Mikey. Mikey could pull guard and neutralize the Sambo fighter's advantage in wrestling and Judo. And it's also down to specialization, I think. Mikey only trains to get the fight to the mat and submit people. It's like asking who wins a jiu-jitsu match between a BJJ competitor and an MMA fighter. Just like with Sambo, the MMA fighter is training a lot more than just submission grappling, so I think the jiu-jitsu athlete has the advantage in a pure sub-only match. If its rules more closely aligned to Sambo, where there's no guard pulling and a perfect throw can end a match, then I think the advantage shifts back towards Sambo. Jiu-jitsu guys as a whole aren't great wrestlers, and I'm allowed to say that because I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. It's something that's just not, in my opinion, trained enough. If you force a jiu-jitsu practitioner to start on the feet against someone very good at Sambo, and the jiu-jitsu practitioner can't pull guard and needs to rely on their wrestling and/or judo skills, they might be in for a rough time. I think the best way to test Sambo versus jiu-jitsu and to see who has the better submission grappling is a straight-up sub-only match. Guard pulls are allowed, throws don't end the match, only subs do. Let's see who can tap whom. Of course, I think jiu-jitsu wins every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Sorry, Sambo. I hope you still like the show. Thank you to Mikey Musumeci for bringing this up. I'll admit I did not know as much about Sambo as I thought I did before I started research for this video. And thank you to you for watching, especially if you watched all the way to now and the end. Let me know in the comments who you think would win in a Sambo versus Jiu-Jitsu fight, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to like this video. There are some more videos on the screen, somewhere over here, and I think somewhere over here. I think you should watch those next because they're pretty good, and I will see you all in the next one.